Let's have a look at how they line up for race 1 of the 3 races, round 5. Larry Perkins is, of course, off the front row alongside his teammate Russell Ingall. The second row, Glenn Seaton, and a terrific effort by Stephen Richards.
Row 3, John Faulkner, great run that in the wet, Peter Brock. Row 4, Greg Murphy, his teammate, and Steve Reed from Sydney in the Lansvale car.
Back to the 5th row, John Bowe and Dick Johnson, both shell cars. Larkham and Hossack on the 6th.
Row 7 sees Wayne Gardner and Mark Poole. Row 8 is Mark Scaife on the comeback trail and Kevin Heffernan.
Working our way back to row 9, Terry Finnegan, Longhurst, then 10 is Osborne and Steniken.
Conway from the back of the grid. We're just about to take the green light. Stephen Richards, fantastic performance in qualifying. He's up there on the second row. We get the green and away they go in Heat 1. Round 5 of the Shell Australia Touring Car Championship, and Stephen Richards already gets muscled into that first corner. You can see the front spoiler get fractured as we go on board in the middle of the heat of this battle on the first lap. There's Seaton up ahead, and the damage just in the side there on Stephen Richards' Commodore.
Well, that is just heart-wrenching stuff. That is such bad luck for Stephen Richards. It looked like there was a bit of contact there with Russell Ingall's car. We were getting some very good pictures out of the front of Greg Murphy's as they worked their way through on the opening lap. There's Darren Hossack right at the back of the pack.
Very physical stuff on this opening lap. Charlie O'Brien pointed to it. Very tight, twisty turns of Winton Raceway. Probably going to be a lot of biff and barge, and we saw that within 20 or 30 metres of the start. So Stephen Richards gets pushed back the order as the Castrol steamroller at the front as they lead them down toward the new part of the circuit. Here they go. Normally they would have turned right on the old track. Now they turn left onto this new loop, this new 1 kilometre addition as they head down Falcon Straight and brake hard for Massport corner.
Good work. Oh, there's Darren Hossack in the Winds. Commodore has spun. Just about to mention that Peter Brock has worked his way up into 3rd after starting in 6th position. So good work by Brock earlier on. Then we go back to Seaton, and it looks like John Bowe. Both Shell cars have worked their way up very quickly.
Well, there's still a couple of little damp spots around the track, so the first few laps they're going to have to take it easy to get those temperatures into the tyres and not to make a mistake early in this race.
Well, as you can see, plenty of time to go. There is the first lap that's just been completed as they come down the Shell straight into Auto Action corner. Seaton and Bowe starting to have a little bit of a tussle. Murphy's further back. Here's Mark Larkham and Wayne Gardner starting to work their way through. John Faulkner, Scaife and Longhurst. That's going to be a tremendous battle.
Then you just sort of watch these lap times too. A 1:32 standing start for Perkins that time around. But the quickest times here at the Tega Test Day back in March, Seaton was the quickest, a 1:23.53. See if they can match that sort of pace. But Seaton now, he shuffled back through the pack. He wouldn't be enjoying that. Back to 4th position.
Both the Castrol Commodores out in front. 10 years that the Australian Touring Car Championship has been here at Winton. There has never been a Holden victory. So today that statistic could very well change.
Well, they've completed half of the equation. Larry Perkins taking pole position, his first pole position in Shell Australian Touring Car Championship history. Also the first Castrol 1-2 in qualifying. So the Castrol team really on fire and returning to that form they showed early in the season.
John Bowe starting to work his way up onto the back of Seaton. That's looking promising for John Bowe after starting in 9th. He has done extremely well to get up there that quickly, Charlie.
Certainly has. The Dunlop tyres, Lee, are really going to suit this track here today. The temperature is quite cold, and the Dunlops certainly work very well early in the race, whereas the Bridgestones take a little longer to come on. So I think we're going to see the Dunlop cars very strong indeed.
Leading speed there at the end of that new extension, 194 kilometres an hour. Lap 2 of 15, long way to go in this battle. Holden Racing Team 2 didn't quite get there. Cut on the tyre tread right in qualifying in those absolute wet conditions yesterday. Larry Perkins jagged it right. Here's Glenn Seaton, our championship leader, with John Bowe, the man in 3rd position on the points, right behind him. We're going to be in for a real knuckle dust here.
Well, if Seaton can get a good result, a good consistent result here at Winton, it's really going to make things difficult in terms of the championship points for the other drivers. He's got a 38-point buffer at the moment over Russell Ingall in 2nd. And then in terms of the championship, that's a big lead already. Seaton could even take it one step further today.
Well, it really has been one of the most ultra-competitive Shell Australian Touring Car Championships ever. A record set with the 4th different winner from 4 rounds at Symonds Plains when Greg Murphy took the victory. Now we've got Larry Perkins on pole position at Winton. It really is one of the most incredible series.
Drivers coming to grips with the new section here at Winton have been handling it pretty well. There's a couple of fast straights and 2 pretty tight corners that make them work very hard. Seaton's been able to pull away from John Bowe there a little bit. Just got a quick glimpse of that.
Lee made comment earlier on that the track has got excellent grip, but it's very, very easy on tyres. And I was looking at some tyres in Tony Longhurst's car before, and after the 20 or 30 minute warm-up session this morning, they were hardly marked.
Great pictures out of the back of Mark Scaife's Gibson Motorsport Commodore here. Here's John Faulkner, Steve Reed back behind him as well. So Faulkner starting to work the back of Scaife reasonably hard. You can see Faulkner's car get sideways. Now let's have a look out the front. There is Mark Scaife sitting right in front of him. So Mark has done extremely well because he started 15th. He's already worked his way up into the top 10.
He had a shocker of a qualifying session. They just could not get any grip yesterday. We could see him sliding all over the road. Dramatic stuff. He really was hustling that car, but just couldn't get any speed out of it. We go on board with Mark Scaife, and you're riding right alongside him. If you were sitting in the passenger seat, this is what you'd see. Mark Scaife hard at the wheel, 110% concentration, and look how close Faulkner gets there.
John Faulkner has just been having the best season so far. It's only his second in the Shell Australian Touring Car Championship, and he is just red hot at the moment.
Well, you can't get much closer than that. Channel 10 cameras take you on board looking out the back. The Gibson Motorsport Commodore. Faulkner closes up under brakes as they fire onto this new part of the circuit. Up Falcon Straight, braking hard up the end of here as they come back toward the new pit section. Scaife looking far more competitive in these dry conditions.
This is the battle for 10th and 11th, so although we're saying Faulkner's going well, he certainly won't be happy after qualifying 5th. He's drifted back quite a few places and he won't be happy with that.
Well, Lee, it was a great effort. Yesterday's conditions were very bad indeed, and for John to be up in 5th position ahead of a lot of the more fancied level 1 teams, it was a great effort. But I think we knew that once the dry conditions came on today, John would go back a little bit.
05 machine of Peter Brock, currently placed 3rd. Mark, he's just been sitting there where he's just plugging away. Yeah,
very quiet approach, but he's starting to feel some pressure from Glenn Seaton now as he starts to charge up through the pack. Seaton a 1:26.46. Fastest man on the track at the moment is Perkins. He's leading this one, a 1:25.78. So Larry, after 4 laps, putting in some consistent times, and it's more than 3.3 seconds back to Brock in 3rd position, then Seaton. This is the battle for 3rd and 4th.
Brock out-qualified his younger teammate Greg Murphy yesterday, qualified 6th fastest. He's sitting in 3rd at the moment, so he's progressing nicely. There is Kevin Heffernan in the Price Attack Commodore. Can't quite identify. Could be Malcolm Steniken. They've both run off the circuit, and you can see just how much water, how much rain we've had here at Winton, because although the track looks reasonably dry, it's quite dry now. The sides very, very wet.
Yes, Lee, you certainly wouldn't want to run off today. Yesterday, quite a few of the cars were going off in the grass section, but of course, having the treaded wet weather tyres, they were getting back on the track quite easily. Today, a different story with slick tyres.
192 kilometres an hour at the end of the new pit straight for Peter Brock in the 05 Commodore. Glenn Seaton starting to apply the thumb screws now. Gets closer to the 05 Commodore, virtually identical in lap times at this stage, as Seaton tries to claw back to try and get into one of the top 3 positions. Currently commanding the Touring Car Championship scoreboard. 294 points to Ingle in 256 and Bow on 240. Very, very tight point struggle at the halfway point of the championship.
Well, speaking of championship points, Mark Brock currently sits 7th, only 4 points behind Larry Perkins. So a little bit of work to do, but both HRT drivers are starting to come good further through the season. They're starting to climb that points ladder. Greg Murphy is up into 4th. He's only 14 points behind John Bow in that top 3 position. Seaton is on the charge though. He's chasing Peter Brock. Glenn Seaton has won, I think, 2 rounds here at Winton in 93 and 94. Peter Brock, on the other hand, has never won a round here at Winton.
Well, just an indication of the tyre war that's happening in Winton Motor Raceway, particularly today. Seaton back in the 26-second bracket. Perkins and Ingle, the only ones operating in the 125. So all of a sudden, they've turned the tables on the Bridgestone boys. The Dunlop guys have got the hot setup.
Yeah, things are looking good for Larry Perkins and Russell Ingle. I was talking with Larry earlier on. I said, well, both of you were dynamite yesterday in the wet. How's it going to be in the dry today? Now the sun's shining. He said, we're quite happy in testing. Things were going well. He said, still backers.
Greg Murphy, second of the Holden Racing Team Mobile Commodores, closing in on the back of John Bow. Car 18, we go on board with Greg Murphy. Absolute dominant winner at Symmons Plains 2 weeks ago in treacherous wet conditions. Now finds himself a little bit further back in the order windscreens O'Brien onboard camera takes you on board car 1-5 as he chases John Bowe. You can hear the brakes squealing there. Very high brake temperatures, somewhere in the region of 700, 800 degrees centigrade in these pads. They really work them hard as they come through this twisty part of the circuit.
Top 10 look like this at the moment. Perkins, Ingle, Brock, Seaton, Bowe, Murphy. Gardner has done well to come up into 7th as we have a look at the replay of Kevin Heffernan coming off. Whoa. He has been able to get out of that one without hitting anything, which is lucky.
Second time he's come off, so he must be having some problems with grip.
Continuing with that top 10, Longhurst is up into 8th, Scaife 9th, and Faulkner 10th.
Well, I thought earlier on that it would be very difficult for any of the fellow competitors to get past Russell Ingle and Larry Perkins, but they are driving away in the distance, and they're getting further away as each lap goes by, so they may not even be challenged in this first heat, Lee.
Speaking of a challenge, here's Greg Murphy all over the back of John Bowe. We go on board now with Greg Murphy in the windscreens. O'Brien in-car camera. He has a look on the outside going into auto action corner. This is it, the challenge on John Bowe. He comes up alongside. John Bowe is not going to let the youngster through. As easy as that, though.
John Bowe, a master of defensive driving, does it very cleanly, very fairly, but always positions his car where the other guy wants to be. It's a very, very good technique he uses, and around Winton, he can play his cards right to the full. Look at Murphy now, comes on the outside, looking for around the outside of Bowe. The Bowe perfectly positioned, shoots out in front of the Commodore. Murphy has got his work cut out for him.
We'll have to keep an eye out because behind him are Gardner and Longhurst. They've been on the charge. Longhurst started 18th, Gardner started 13th. They've done a terrific job working their way immediately into the top 10.
Here comes Murphy. Has more than looked down the outside, but Bowe perfectly positioned again on the inside of the line. Now this little carve up is allowing Gardner to get closer and closer. Murphy now comes for a run along Falcon Straight as they break hard down the end here. He's more than half a car length in front of Bowe, but Bowe once again well positioned on the inside. Murphy just runs out of real estate, has to tuck back in behind Bowe, and Gardner all the time climbing onto the back of him.
Well, this is quite stressful racing for John Bowe. You're not taking your normal lines that come natural to you. You've got to keep looking in the mirror, putting yourself in a position where the other guy wants to be. So John is actually doing it harder than probably most of the rest of the drivers out there.
Spending half the time looking back and half the time looking forward. Here comes Gardner. Have a look at him in the Coke machine. It's not his car that he's driving. He's driving the team's spare car, Neil Crompton's car, and he's doing very, very well. The Yokohamas are working nicely, thank you. Larry Perkins and Russell Ingle, the two Castrol Commodores, are cruising out in front. Life is fairly comfortable for them at the moment.
John Bowe, Greg Murphy and Gardner continue that great battle behind these guys, 5th, 6th and 7th, but look at this domination by the Castrol Commodores again. Only boys running in the 1:25 second bracket at the moment and opening up a gap 3.5 seconds over Brock. They're just maintaining that gap, hasn't got over 4 seconds so far.
Well, at the official test here at Winton, they were talking times of 1:23s, 1:24s, so Perkins and Ingle are getting very close to that, running in the 1:25s.
We were talking before, we were looking at John Bowe before, and there's certainly a good battle lining up behind him. Wayne Gardner has caught onto the back of Greg Murphy, and Wayne is trying desperately to get up and amongst it, so we'll keep an eye on that soon.
On board with Mark Scaife in the Gibson Motorsport Commodore. There you go, you can see the gap out his windscreen, how much he has to do to catch up to Gardner, Murphy and Bowe, but Mark has done very well. Let's give him credit. He did start 15th, and he currently sits in 8th position.
Great shot over the shoulder of Mark Scaife as he tries to close the gap for that battle. With Bowe, Murphy and Gardner climbing all over each other. Here they are. Tremendous stuff. Murphy just cannot find a way past the Shell Falcon no matter how hard he tries. And as they get caught up in this little battle, they've dropped off like maybe 1.5 seconds a lap, which has allowed Gardner to close the gap behind him. There's going to be a real concertina effect if they keep this up for a few more laps.
Just got a quick look there at Greg Murphy having a glimpse in his rearview mirror. He knows that Gardner's all over the back of him. Great pictures here from the windscreens O'Brien in-car camera. He is right on John Bowe. He's been working hard for about 2 or 3 laps now to try and get past JB, but he just can't do it.
Well, Lee, I think that little look we saw from Greg Murphy from the inside car camera was a little look of disgust not being able to get past John.
Well, this is really going to open up the field. The 4 cars running in front of them have just completed 1 minute 25-second lap times. Bow and Murphy and Gardner right back on the 1:28, so it's costing them 3 seconds a lap, this battle. And Murphy all the time frustrated as he's stuck behind John Bow.
Gardner was a little disillusioned after the last round at Symmons Plains, but you have a look at the results. He got a 3rd, a 5th and a 4th, and he has jumped up into 5th in the championship. Here comes Greg Murphy now. Having a look on the inside of John Bow as the outside for that left-hander. Now they go on to Falcon Straight. We'll see what Greg can do here. Having a look on the inside. JB says, no, Greg, that's my line.
He just knows he can just run this conservative line as much as he likes. Looks like he goes back on the inside of the corner again, doesn't give Murphy an option there. And then make sure he positions his car perfectly, so Murphy has to go the long way around to try and get past. Have a listen to the rev of this V8. Well, another drag race, not quite enough speed. Coming out of a slow corner like that, the car in front is always on the power, just a fraction before the car behind, and that's just enough when you're trying to catch a little bit of speed to get past.
Charlie, is Wayne Gardner going to be in a good position here to just jump up on Murphy?
Well, particularly if Greg gets a little too excited and maybe touches John, and it slows them both down, Wayne could be in a position to slip past. But I can tell you that race director Tim Shankin will be watching this battle very, very closely. He doesn't want to see any paint rubbed off, but I'd say back in the old days of racing V8s with the bashing and crashing that used to go on, this would be an all nightmare.
Charlie, when we were on board there with Greg Murphy, there was quite a high-pitched squealing noise. Brakes, yeah?
Yeah, it's just the brakes having a bit of a squeal, probably not quite up to temperature because they're not working them that hard.
See if we can listen. Just the brakes?
Yeah, it's just a normal thing that happens quite often.
Meanwhile, Mark Scaife doing some very competitive times. Down the 27s, he's slowly closing the gap to these guys. 11 laps completed, he may run out of time. A tremendous battle here, Murphy now trying to close the gap. We go back with Mark Scaife. Can't quite see that battle in front of him, but he's slowly hauling them in.
We've got 3 laps left to run in this opening race of round 5, and that statistic that I mentioned to you earlier on, that Holden has never had a round victory here at Winton, is getting off to the right start with both Castrol Commodores up the front. Larry Perkins still leads the way from his teammate Russell Ingall. There's Mark Scaife in the Gibson Motorsport Commodore, working hard back in 8th position. Laps counting down. We go back on board with Mark Scaife. Here's the 2 Castrol Commodores. Beautifully turned out cars. Well done to Larry Perkins and Russell Ingall so far. They've been faultless.
Yeah, well, he did a very, very clever thing yesterday. Well, it was very fortunate. They just, tyre engineers had to decide how they're going to cut up the tyres to make sure they had the best tread pattern for those wet conditions. Perkins and Ingall judged it perfectly, and they had such a grip advantage in that qualifying session, and they used it to perfection. So now they're carrying on that speed in dry conditions. They were confident they were going to deliver, and they're certainly proving it here now.
This is their home track, and after they come down this big section through into the Motorsport News S's, they're only 2 laps away from a Castrol 1-2 like it was at Phillip Island. Ingall doing a good job just cruising around behind his team boss.
Well, Lee, the amount of Castrol 1-2 finishes we've had this year in the non-championship races and also in the championship races, it may go on to set a record for the series.
We'll keep an eye on that stat for you. Time ticks on and we wind down in this one. Top 10, Perkins, Ingall, Brock, Seaton still in 4th. Bow hasn't fought, Murphy hasn't been able to get past John Bow as yet. Gardner still in 7th, Scaife, Faulkner and Mark Larkham in the Mitre 10 Falcon has worked his way up into 10th position.
Well, the battle between Bow and Murphy and Wayne Gardner, there's a gap now developed between John Bow and Greg Murphy because Wayne is trying desperately to get past Greg. And so Greg now is having to watch his rear mirror, so John's allowed to get himself a little bit of distance between the two.
Well, Gardner would be happy to be up there, mixing it with him after starting well back, as I mentioned before, in 13th position. The Castrol Commodores of Larry Perkins and Russell Ingall are doing a fantastic job. Here we go with our series points leader. He has a problem by the looks of things. There's a lot of smoke. What can you make of that, Charlie?
Well, it's very hard to see from this angle. It's obviously either a tyre or it's actually smoke coming from underneath the car, so maybe another angle will get a clear shot of that.
Well, let's hope that he can stay out there on the circuit and at least finish on. We are on our way home, so that would just be devastating for our series points leader if he couldn't continue. We'll keep a close eye on it though.
Notice on the times there, he has dropped about 3 or 4 seconds on that lap, so it is probably a tyre maybe.
Well, he's got plenty of ground between himself and back to 5th place John Bowe, some 12 seconds, so he's got a lot of time up his sleeve, so there's no hassle, no urgency there as we watch Larry Perkins and Russell Ingall bring this one home out of Repco corner. This is still on the old part of the circuit. Do you remember they would have kept going straight ahead here and into the Motorsport S's, and now they go hard left along this quite long Falcon Straight up into 2 quite tight corners.
A couple of good passing corners, but again, as we saw from John Bowe before, you can protect very, very well. So it's a matter of just sitting in there and having a little patience and waiting for that right time. But Russell Ingall is not really challenging Larry here. It's going to be an absolute perfect 1-2 finish, and with the boss at the right end of the field.
Well, neither of these two have won a round here at Winton either, but they've started the day the right way. Well done, Larry Perkins and Russell Ingall. They come in for a Castrol Commodore 1-2 in race number 1 today. Well done, Larry Perkins. A win from pole position. Seaton has managed to hang on. Good work to Glenn there. He has hung on to pick up 4th position. Peter Brock ended up getting in there for 3rd, as we see both Castrol Commodore drivers. Larry Perkins will be very happy with his effort there. And Russell Ingall, some very valuable championship points. And more to the point, he was a couple of positions better than Seaton, the man he is chasing to try and bridge that 38-point gap in the championship.
Yes, Lee, actually, John Bowe finished 5th in the race. He held on to that position, which was being challenged so hard by Greg Murphy. So it just goes to show that if you persevere, you can get through.
Well, let's have a look at the final placings for you. Larry Perkins and Russell Ingall, the 1-2 there. Peter Brock, good work by Brocky, in for 3rd. Glenn Seaton in for 4th. And John Bowe managed to stay in the top 5.